as you can see, the lovely English spring weather, which is currently tipping it down with rain, has meant we're going to have a little bit of a change of pace today. And instead of working on, if I can actually point my camera in the right direction, instead of working on finishing off any of the bits of the chop on that, instead going to be looking at a little bit of work on the engine now. Obviously currently the engine is sitting on a pallet in the garage, but before it can go back in, there's a few things that need to be done to it. So I've got a new clutch kit to go on it. I have a flywheel, which, as you can see, it turns out, shockingly enough, that even a refinished flywheel sitting outside for a year doesn't do much for the finish on it. We've got the gearbox there. We've got the car bell housing, so that's a 50, I think it's a 54 car bell housing, which actually connects to this, which is an original 3-speed overdrive, the original 3-speed overdrive from that shoebox, and we're going to mate it to that, which is a 239 Y block. It's a truck one, which, if I remember rightly, it's a 10-inch clutch pressure plate that I've got to go with that. Might be 11-inch, pretty sure it's 10-inch. So we've got a few things that we need to do to this. The first one being fitting the core plug that goes over the cam there, because otherwise I'm going to forget, and then oil will go in all the places that oil shouldn't go. So let's first of all see if I can find that. Ah, there it is. And then we'll hammer that in, and then we'll come back to cleaning up the pressure plate, cleaning up the flywheel rather, and getting that on. Well, that was a little quicker than I expected, because the core plug that I've got for that is slightly too large, so even as an interference fit it won't fit. So we can't move on that bit. So what else have I got that I can possibly do to pass the time? Well, I've got a couple of little bits here. So this is a fuel pump, which is purely for decoration, just because I think they look nice with the original fuel pumps on them. I don't have the lobe fitted to the camshaft, if I remember rightly. I think it sits on the end of the cam, so it's not going to work, but I've got an electric fuel pump that I always run in that, pulling from the tank. So this is purely a decorative piece, so we'll give this a little bit of a wire wool up and we'll fit it there. And again, likewise, because as you can see I'm running a PCV system, because I drilled and fitted into the valley pan, it's a bit dark in here, into the valley pan a PCV valve, so obviously that run off to the carburetor there. Don't need a road draft tube, but for the purpose of it, again looking original, we'll give this a little blow over in black, and we can fit the road draft tube just down in there where it's supposed to go. So I'll get a little bit of wire wool out, we'll give this a little bit of clean, give that a little bit of spray over, and then we'll come back and we'll fit those in, possibly having tidied my pallet up a little bit. So I've pulled out what I originally had in there, which was just a little aftermarket Moroso blanking plate, but I thought it looked a little bit sort of 60s, so I've gone for, as I say, one of these original fuel pumps. What I have done is just whip off the little push rod there, so there's no danger of any interference or it actually trying to pump anything, and rather than a gasket, because it's never going to go anywhere, I've just basically whacked a bit of a Sikaflex on there, and we'll just stick it in the hole and get a couple of bolts in there. So they're not even the final bolts that are going in there, because one of them I've just nicked from my exhaust manifold, but it looks quite a lot nicer with that sitting in there. Granted, there's going to be no fuel line. I don't think I'm going to bother putting a fake fuel line in there, but it looks quite cool. With the road draft tube, just giving it a little slow dust over of black paint, paint it black, put it back, as Lucky Costa would say, and it will just sit in there. Might have to wobble it around on the engine stand a little bit, because it's, I know it does just clear my my engine palette, and we'll stick that in there too. You can see from one of the previous videos, you've already seen this slimline oil filter from a kit car, which does clear the steering box, which sits about there. That's got an adapter, spin-on oil filter adapter from a 312, if I remember rightly. Now, what I am going to have to do today as well is I've got a whole bunch of small port gaskets, because when I last took the inlet off, for whatever reason I forgot to remove one of the bolts, and I managed to tear up one of the gaskets around there. So we're going to end up with a massive inlet leak if I leave that like that. And it's one of those things that if I don't do it relatively soon, I'm probably going to forget, and then I wonder why it's not running properly when it's in the car. Although, again, I'm not sure if I can be bothered really to do that today, so I might just leave those gaskets on there as a reminder, because what I do really want to do is to get on with fitting that flywheel. Unfortunately, as I said, I've just had to reorder another core plug, because the one that I've got doesn't fit. So we'll probably have to come back in a week or so to film the second part of this video, when I'll do all of those bits, and I will also fit the thermostat into the thermostat housing there. Again, that's just sitting on there loose, but we've got all of the bypass hose and everything all fitted onto there, and then I can start finally measuring up to build the brackets for, well, the rear bracket for the alternator conversion. So I've got that on there, which is the front bracket that I'm going to use. My rather shitty little handmade timing pointer there, and I'm going to have to work out a method of using some slightly longer bolts to fit the adjustment rose jointed rod on there for that. But we'll hit that up when I come back on this after a little while. And I think that's a truck timing cover, so I'm going to have to also work out how I'm going to build a bracket across here, which will mount and form the engine mount for the front. But I think that's going to have to wait till it's dangling in the car. I do have some ram's horn manifolds for this as well, somewhere on the shelf. Can't actually remember where they are, so I'm going to have to hunt for them now and do a little fix up on them. Now, if anybody could tell me whether these holes are blind, I think they are, or whether they go through actually to the block. Likewise with this hole, that I think that's a blind hole in the casting there. I know that is an oil port hole, but I have blocked it up. I thought that I'd forgotten to block up one of these, but it looks like I've certainly got something wedged in there anyway. Must have done that a good long time ago. Likewise, if anyone knows if that's a blind hole, that'd be quite useful. I'll probably stick some photos in the Y Block group to double check those. Okay, so well, I'll see you in a week, but it will be like that by the magic of TV. So whilst I'm waiting for the engine parts to be delivered, let's see if we can do anything about the back of this. So obviously before I grind these back and finish the welds, what you can see if you get down like this is we've got a little dip there, we've got a little dip here, and we've got the same on that side there, primarily due to the nature of the MIG welding process, where you can't planish the welds as you're doing them because they're too brittle. So we've got shrinkage around here, which has caused that to pop in. Likewise, we've got shrinkage around here, which has caused that to pop in. So a few different ways that I could fix that, but the first one that I'm going to try is to use my trolley jack and some wood blocks up here braced off the floor as a little bit of a sort of a porter power, so I can re-stretch this bit of metal here, re-stretch this bit of metal here, and then bring it up. And by re-stretching it, I can then hammer and dolly against an actual dolly on the outside to stretch it and refine where it needs, if it needs any more stretching, and if I need to shrink it back because we've got any sort of oil canning, well, I can then heat it up and hammer it. So next stage then is to get some wide hardwood and the trolley jack out. There's not much there, but I really don't want there to be much in the way of filler, so let's see if we can get rid of that, as that's a relatively short job, certainly a lot shorter than finish welding all of those seams. Okay, so I have been known in the past to do what my family would technically describe as some pretty sketchy shit. This actually doesn't even register in terms of some of the stupid stuff I've done in the past, but here we have a trolley jack, a bit of an engine stand, which is now braced up against the bit that needs popping out. And so what we'll do, that's that bit there, is we'll see whether we can overstretch the metal with this. Oh, seems to be making some sort of noises anyway. Let's see what's broken. It doesn't look like anything's broken. And it hasn't ripped all the welds out of here, so that's a comforting sign. Well, that's quite a lot better than it actually was. I'm just going to go get a hammer and give it a few whacks just to try and settle it down in that position. Get a dolly on the top there, give it a tap from underneath, and then we'll let that down and see whether or not it's stayed. And if it has, we'll try it at an even more of a sketchy angle on that little bit there. Okay, well, it was marginally successful. We've now got to the point where we've got some oil canning in there, so it has stretched it. It just hasn't quite popped it out, so I'm going to have to work on that a little bit more. Okay, so I seem to have not bothered videoing the second bit. I did the same trick on this bit where this seam is here. Possibly still needs a little bit of relief cutting as well as welding it up. On the outside here, where I managed to get it to oil can, I just did the old school trick of heating it up, letting it cool to shrink it back, and it's now popped it up, and we have a much difficult to tell some of the burn marks of the paint now, but it's got a much nicer curve radius to it there, and again not too much sinkage there. I will have to fix these up again once I finish grinding back the welds and finish welding them, because they will shrink along these seams again. But hopefully if I can keep the heat affected zone a little narrower, will be good to not have quite the same problem again, which means I've now got to try and duplicate the process over here, where, as you can see, we don't actually have any form of movement at all, but because the inside of this bit of the car is, for want of a better word, an absolute bloody tip, I'm going to do that off camera, and you'll be able to see the result of that when I get to finish this side, because this side is quite a few steps behind the driver's side, the passenger side rather. So that's now a lot better than it was. It's not perfect, but it's not a sort of a cave and pave job anymore, and fix up all of these welds and all of these seams and whatnot over the time. But that's a nice profile as we go down there. There's no major dips. So quite happy with that for a day's work. Now I was going to finish the engine before I put this video out, but I think what I'll do is I'll just put this video out now, knowing that I haven't finished any of the work I wanted to do on the engine, but I'll pick that up when the core plug has arrived and we can reassemble all of the clutch pack and stuff on that. But there was little work on the C-pillars there, so it's not been an entirely pointless wasted afternoon. Yeah, as I say, if you are enjoying the project, give us a like, give us a subscribe, follow along, chuck me any questions. Yeah, till next time guys, laters.